It's Brian O'Neill, and in 1994, when I finished writing my 18th book, I was disappointed to find out that the book's intended title, Authority and the Liberal Tradition, had been taken the year before. Authority and the Liberal Tradition, doesn't that sound like a good title for a book, Dr. Bob?
A minor classic in American political thought, Brian. Yes, indeed.
Next on AM 1480 WLEA, The Newsmaker Show. Here's Brian O'Neill.
I was reading some of your version of Authority in the Liberal Tradition. You had some interesting concepts there.
Well, thank you, Brian. It has sold pretty well over the years. Hello.
Okay, did you see that the Drudge Report had a link to a story about a CNBC website about Trump's great job numbers?
Well,
Joblessness claim drops to the lowest level since 1969.
Well, it probably means the unemployment rate will drop a little bit. Maybe. It's hard to tell. Depends on all the total numbers. So what's Joe Biden have to say about that?
Well, yeah, now that you bring me to my third or fourth question, they've been jumping all over Biden for, the smelling people's hair and, stepping into people's personal space.
Yes.
In kind of unusual ways. Is
Yes.
this going to excommunicate Biden from the Democrats?
Well, a lot of Democrats would hope it does, but I don't think so. I think it's really kind of hilarious, really, poor Joe. But he's definitely going to have to change his approach toward dealing. Perhaps a handshake would be sufficient.
Put out
now.
a statement saying he's going to be more respectful and more in with the Me Too ways.
Well, the point of that statement, I think, really, Brian, is that it shows that Biden is definitely interested in running for the presidency. If he weren't, if he was decided, well, this is too much, or I've had enough, he wouldn't have to say anything. He could just kind of slip off to the side. But the idea that he put this statement out, and of course, I guess he didn't apologize, but I don't know. There's a need to apologize, but it clearly indicates, I think, that he's going to go ahead and run. And I think, frankly, that all this attempt to besmirch him, so to speak, is only going to help him in the long run. People are just kind of shaking their heads.
Doesn't that work in reverse when somebody gets ganged up on too much?
Yeah, no, I agree. That's what I just said. Yes. He's a front runner, and he can expect that sort of thing. And there'll probably be other faux pas of one sort or another that Mr. Biden will have to deal with. And he's certainly good with the old faux pas. I'll give him that. He's but in terms of likability, in terms of reasonably good sense, Biden is, I think, head and shoulders above the entire group of Democrats running right now. And again, I repeat my advice to Joe. I guess I can call him Joe. I would not participate in the debates. I would have nothing to do with them.
If we could talk briefly about this. A future presidential possibility, AOC, Congresswoman Ocasio-Cortez.
What?
Well, it's not impossible. The younger people like
Are
her.
you moving off into fantasy land here on me, Brian?
Get this. I had Hornell Democratic Chairman Sam Naska on yesterday, and this was interesting. I threw out a really easy softball question saying, there's been a lot of criticisms on our station of AOC. Would you like to say anything nice in her defense? And he wouldn't. He came on and said he's friends with former Congressman Crowley.
Oh, is that right?
Yes. Sam Naska, he would not stick up for AOC in the least.
You just don't know out there, Brian. The situation in Chicago where they just elected a woman mayor, and that's going to get very interesting, and I hope it doesn't get totally out of control. But the interesting thing about the woman who won, as I understand it, she has no previous political experience. Now, can you imagine that, walking into being mayor of Chicago without any previous political experience? You better be a pretty quick study, is all I have to say. I mean, that's...
What do you think happened to Rahm?
I think he just had enough. But talk about coming out of the coming out of the clouds. This woman came out of nowhere, and you got the OAC running around. Has come out of nowhere.
How about Mayor Sam out in Los Angeles? Have you followed that at all?
No, who's that?
Okay, the mayor of Los Angeles. I'm on his blog page now. It's getting a lot of attention. Mayor Sam is what he goes by. And what's that, Doc?
I never said anything. I may have yawned. I'm not sure.
He's not as big as Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who's in the House, but
it's a little out of control
Bob,
right now.
Drudge Report has House votes to end Yemen war, rebuffing President Trump. What do you make of that?
Well, I think Trump will probably veto it, although I certainly have no problem with the idea of cutting back on that whole approach. I think, Brian, could we move on to some other issues here that are a little more off the grid?
I would like to talk about, if we could, at some point in the show, discuss how things are going for Kurt Crandall.
Well, I thought we might discuss the state Senate race in the 57th District.
Yeah. Senator Young drops out a few weeks ago to work at Cornell University. Two names pop up: George Borrello, the Chautauqua County Republican executive, and Republican Kurt Crandall, legislative chair over in Allegheny County. Question: why is it that I keep seeing these stories in the news where Borrello seems to imply he's the only guy?
Right. He's trying to take the initiative on this. I think he does not want a primary, because I think Mr. Crandall's chances in a primary are quite good. But here's the situation up to pretty much, as far as I know, yesterday, and that is that Borrello, of course, filed his petitions with the State Board of Elections, and Tuesday afternoon, Mr. Crandall also filed his petitions with the State Board of Elections, and it looks to me as though, in terms of signatures, they're probably pretty close. Crandall had, and again, you don't see this out here, but he had over, I think, 1,400 signatures, had another 100 or so on his desk, but because of the rush of time and the deadlines, he wasn't able to get those turned in, but he certainly appreciates the fact that people signed them. But you needed 750, and Crandall had about double that, and Borrello claims that he's had double that. So the real thing that keeps coming up is this thought that somehow Governor Cuomo is going to call a special election. And that changes the whole dynamic of the situation if he does that. Now,
why? Can I ask why so?
I'm going to get to that, Brian. So the point is, the question is, why would he call a special election? There's really no need to do that. You got people who've already filed petitions for the primary on June 25th. They could go into the primary, and whoever wins that then would go into the general election. Now, one of the problems for Mr. Borrello is, of course, he is running on the Republican, independents, and conservative lines, and Mr. Crandall is running only as a Republican. So I don't know what Mr. Borrello would do if he were to lose in the June 25th election. Would he still continue to be a conservative and independence candidate, or would he accept the judgment of the Republican voters? I don't know. Somebody's going to have to ask him that. But here's the thing with the special election. And I don't, well, at any rate, there's a special election, and the county chairs, Republican county chairs, the Democrat county chairs meet, and they designate a candidate for that election. And the point is, Mr. Borrello is claiming that this spur-of-the-moment informal meeting over in Cuba last month with the 4 county chairs means he's the designated candidate. Well, it certainly does not mean that. First of all, there hasn't been a special election called, and my understanding was basically an informal meeting. 3 of the chairs said they would support Borrello, and Mr. Healy from Allegheny County supported Crandall. Crandall's position was, I'm not going to have anything to do with this. I want the voters to have their say. I'm going out and get petitions, which he has done. So that's that. Now the question is the governor going to call a special election? He could call it for the June 25th primary day. The problem with that is then the poll, that would be expensive because the polls would have to be open from 6 in the morning to 9 at night, whereas in a primary they're open only from noon to 9. So all the various polling spots in the 57th district would have to be open an extra 6 hours to accommodate the special election, which would be between the Republican designee and the Democrat. Now, what's interesting on that side is I don't know what the Democrats are doing. They got this guy, 22-year-old guy out of Freedom, that I guess they want to go with. But
the Cornell student.
Yeah, and I don't know whether he's the designated candidate or wouldn't the 4 Democrat chairs come together. Let's say the governor calls a special election. 4 Democrat chairs come together and say, well, buddy, thanks for your fill-in here, and go with somebody who's a more credible candidate. Frankly, if they go with this lady from Cattaraugus County, who I think is very popular.
They being the Democrats.
Yeah, and central to the district, I don't know how conservative she is. If she's halfway conservative, they could pick that seat up, because I guarantee you there's a lot of unhappiness with Chautauqua County and the way Mr. Borrello has pushed his claims out on the district that somehow he's the anointed candidate.
Now, you've said from the beginning that Chautauqua County Executive George Borrello is Long Island Republican State Senator John Flanagan's handpicked choice.
Yeah, he's clearly the choice of the power. What's left? I guess you can't really power leaders in Albany, given the fine job Mr. Flanagan did in terms of trying to hold on to the state senate. The whole thing is pretty scary. Now, in terms of calling a special election, obviously if he called the special election June 25th, then whoever's elected would be the state senator for the 57th district. If you go through the general primary process, June 25th, then you would have the general election in November, and the seat would basically be vacant for those months. And although the staff is still there taking calls and answering questions and things, on the other hand, if I'm the Democrats, I don't know why you would want to hurry to fill that Senate seat for the Republicans.
What is more to Flanagan's advantage, to have a special election or a primary?
Well, I think a special election from his point of view, because he's got Chautauqua County in his back pocket, and he thinks, if the Republican...
Could Kurt Crandall from Allegheny County win in a special election?
No, he could not be in the special election.
Oh, he can't be in it at all?
No. The designated candidate from the Republican chairs would be the candidate, and the same with the Democrats. And that's why I'm saying this guy from Freedom they might just ask him to step aside and designate somebody a little more with a little more clout. Again, I don't know what the Democrats are thinking. It's kind of hard to tell in any case. So that's where it is, folks, and we're just waiting. The government has so many days. The governor has so many days in which he can call the special election. So, but again, Mr. Crandall and I guess Borrello, they're both proceeding with petitions and going out, assuming that they got to be ready for a primary.
Well, this is interesting information, and not to brag that it's information you're not going to get anywhere else, but it is information at the moment that is not being heard anywhere else,
right?
Or read anywhere else.
Borrello has kind of monopolized the media.
Yeah, he has.
And part of it is, of course, he's just been elected county executive in Chautauqua County, so he served a little over a year of his term as county executive, and so I assume he has some campaign network left there that he can put in place pretty fast. Another problem with Borelli is, of course, and I don't know how the Republicans like this in Chautauqua County, they had a pretty tough campaign to get him elected, and now he's moving off, thinks he's going to run for the state Senate. They could lose that county executive position. The Democrats run a candidate to fill it. That could be that could turn Democrat too. So it's, there's ups and downs on both sides there.
Going to take a quick break. We'll be back with Dr. Bob right after this.
If you're drowning in IRS tax debt, please get ready to take down this number to take advantage of the new IRS tax forgiveness programs. The IRS has recently hired private debt collection agencies to start collecting your outstanding taxes.
Prior to calling Superior Tax Relief, I owed the IRS $33,000, and my wages had just been garnished. Superior Tax Relief put a stop to the garnishment and was able to resolve my tax problem. I walked away owing close to nothing. I would highly recommend Superior Tax Relief. They saved my life.
We can protect you from the added fees and negotiate your tax liability. Superior Tax Relief can set you free from your tax issues. Call Superior Tax Relief to find out how you can qualify for the Fresh Start program that's now available. Don't hesitate. Call today. Call 800-711-5099. The consultation is free. The information is free. This call could save you thousands. Call 800-711-5099. 800-711-5099. That's 800-711-5099.
Back with Elfin University, political science professor emeritus Dr. Robert A. Heineman.
Yes.
Dr. Bob, Trump versus all the other candidates. It's kind of like it was when Trump was first running for president. You got 80 gazillion Democrats this time, as opposed to the first time President Trump ran, first and last time, that it was Trump versus 16 others.
Yeah, I believe. Yeah. No, I think there are a couple things going on there that we might touch on. And first and foremost, a more positive vein is our negotiations with the Chinese seem to be moving along pretty well. And my understanding is that the president and Xi Jinping are moving toward another summit meeting, and I think they're hoping that they can sort of put the final touches on an agreement between the two countries in terms of trade, which would be a very good thing for both countries and the world generally, actually. So that's pretty positive. On the other side, you've got some of these people in the House of Representatives that obviously are not going to let the Mueller report go. I mean, there's not enough there. There's got to be more damage in it. Apparently, some of the Mueller investigators now are leaking their views to the New York Times and some of the other newspapers, saying, well, no, this is a lot more serious than what Mueller and Barr, the Attorney General, have let on. Well, maybe it is, maybe it's not. But what's interesting is the House is issuing subpoenas to force President Trump and his people to release data. And Trump may well do pretty much what Obama did and simply ignore them. And and I wouldn't believe him if he did. So he may just, ignore the subpoenas. And I don't know what authority the House of Representatives has to force the president or any of these people to actually testify. It's something that could end up in court again, but thanks to Mitch McConnell, the majority leader of the U.S. Senate, we got the courts in pretty good shape these days. I think they'll be reasonably sympathetic to our president.
As far as Congressman Tom Reed goes, no major Reed stories this week. I notice, as it happens to Senator Gillibrand, happens to Senator Schumer, he takes some, I wouldn't call them beatings, but, severe criticisms. Reed made a point of saying that he disagreed with the Democrats who were stalling on some legislation that would help women learn self-defense courses. And somebody jumped back and said, don't blame women for what men do to them, which Reid wasn't doing.
No.
There's a lot of unreasonable complaints against Senator Gillibrand. Now, I know you don't like the senator, but on the Al Franken issue...
dislike her. I certainly don't. Yeah, go
right,
ahead.
but I think on the Al Franken issue, some people are going a little bit too far. I've seen people swear at Senator Gillibrand. I've seen some comments where they say that, she's solely to blame for Al Franken's demise, as if Al Franken didn't have a bunch of accusers.
Yeah, well, so long
but
for Al
Gillibrand's
Franken.
Presidential campaign is not going anywhere. Do you think that's because of the Me Too thing, or what do you attribute?
I don't think she has anything to offer, basically. I don't quite understand. I suppose there are people around her who are encouraging her to do this, she of course has tried to make her position as a feminist candidate, a concern for women's rights sort of candidate. Any issue that involves that sort of thing, she's right there at the forefront with comments. But I guess that's another aspect we might throw into this program, and that is this hashtag #MeToo movement. I think is beginning to sputter a little bit, and I think it's not going to be at the forefront that it has been by the time we get moving into heavy presidential concerns. And I think you can see that begin to drift with Gillibrand's candidacy as well. But, first of all, the whole Joe Biden thing, which people think, well, come on. But also this lieutenant governor there in Virginia, I mean, the charges made against him are really pretty serious and graphic, and they just seem to be ignoring them.
Well, if we cut to the chase, who will it be that's on the Democrats' ticket, do you think, in November 2020?
I don't make predictions like that. No. Sorry.
I
know there may be people on this show. What?
If I was doing it, I would make it something like Kamala Harris and Gillibrand, or Cory Booker and Kamala Harris. I would think those would be formidable tickets for President Trump to run against.
Yeah, I would go with, Biden I think would be tough, but that would be kind of humorous. I would enjoy that. No, I think Cuomo and Kamala Harris would be a very tough combination.
Is he going to get into it, do you think?
I think so, yes.
For the 2020 race?
Sure.
Because he said so far the one who appeals to him the most is Kirsten Gillibrand, but you think he'll jump into it?
Yeah. Well, he's just trying to be supportive of another New Yorker, I think.
Right.
No, he's watching them tear each other to pieces, and when the time comes, he'll step in.
Well, we've been talking to Dr. Robert A. Heineman, Alfred University Professor Emeritus. Want to thank you so much for stopping by, Dr. Bob.
Well, I appreciate the chance to try to keep up to date here, Brian. Yes, indeed.
Thanks for your info there. That was very interesting.